On Earth, the night was calm, cities glowing with lights, families enjoying their dinners, and children laughing in playgrounds. There was peace, and people believed the defense satellites orbiting the planet would keep them safe forever, Captain. Daniel Harris stood on the balcony of his apartment in Washington, looking at the stars and thinking of his years in the Navy. He had seen battles on the edges of human colonies, but Earth had always been untouchable. Tonight felt no different. Until the alarms started to scream. The sky tore apart with fire. People looked up as streaks of red light cut through the atmosphere. They were not meteors. They were missiles. 10 of them, burning brighter and falling faster than anything Earth had ever seen. The defense satellites moved into position, beams of light firing to intercept. But the missiles were not ordinary weapons. Their shields twisted the beams away. The satellites exploded one by one, leaving the sky open. The first missile struck New York. The blast turned towers into dust. Flames roared into the night. Millions screamed as the shockwave shattered glass across states. Daniel fell to the floor as the ground trembled even in Washington. He rushed out to the streets where chaos had already begun. Cars crashed. People cried. Mothers clutched children as the ground shook again from another strike. The second missile hit Tokyo, its heart torn apart in seconds. The third slammed into Berlin. The fourth into Sao Paulo. The fifth into Sydney. Each blast spread death and smoke. Then came the sixth in Moscow, the seventh in Los Angeles, the eighth in London, the ninth in Cairo, the 10th in Johannesburg. The world map lit up with fire and destruction. Commander Olivia Price was at the defense headquarters when the strikes began. She had been running simulations for possible alien attacks, but no simulation prepared her for this. Screens lit up red, cities gone, voices shouting from every corner of the command room. Olivia tried to steady her voice as she gave orders, but deep down, her chest tightened with grief. She knew millions had just died, and it was only the beginning. On the streets, Daniel saw the world he loved fall apart. People running, flames rising. The once calm Earth turned into a battlefield without soldiers. He pulled a young boy from the rubble of a building and carried him to safety. He looked up and saw the night sky glowing with the fire of cities burning far away. Tears blurred his vision, but he clenched his fists, whispering to himself that humanity could not end like this. News channels, those still alive, broadcast, broken images, anchors crying, showing the world what had happened. 10 missiles had done what no war in history had done. They had cut into the heart of every continent. Humanity stood stunned, powerless. The enemy had not shown their face, only fire and ruin. The people of Earth asked why, who, and how. At headquarters, Olivia received the first decoded message from deep space. The attackers had announced themselves. The Veari Dominion, an alien empire that ruled many systems with cruelty. Their message was short and cold. They warned that Earth was weak, a planet of soft people, and that this was only a warning strike. Surrender would follow. Olivia's eyes burned as she read. The words aloud to the council. She knew humanity was being tested like prey. Daniel and Olivia met in the ruined capital. Standing among shattered buildings, smoke in the sky, and people searching for their families, Daniel looked at Olivia, his uniform torn, his face covered in ash, and he said with a heavy voice that humanity must fight. Not tomorrow, not after. Meetings and debates, but now, Olivia agreed, her mind racing with calculations and possibilities. She was certain Earth had the strength to answer. As night passed, survivors gathered in shelters. Doctors treated the wounded. Soldiers organized rescue missions, and leaders called for unity. The pain was unbearable, but in the middle of despair, something fierce was born. People looked at the sky not with fear anymore, but with anger. The stars that once seemed peaceful now looked like hunting grounds, and humanity realized they would have to become hunters themselves. The first strike had brought death and sorrow, but it had also lit a fire in the human heart. Daniel swore on the ashes of New York that he would command the fleet that would rise from Earth. Olivia swore she would guide the strategy that would bring justice. They did not know how, but they knew one truth. The Veari Dominion thought humans were weak, but they would soon learn that humanity was not prey. Humanity was fury waiting to rise. The night ended with silence. The fire still burning, the world broken but alive. Children cried themselves to sleep. Parents whispered promises of survival. Daniel stood on the balcony again, the stars still shining coldly, but now he saw them differently. They were no longer faraway lights. They were the battlefield of tomorrow, and when humanity rose to strike back, the galaxy would tremble. The world was still shaking from the destruction when the leaders of Earth gathered in the underground chambers of the United Defense Council. The council was hidden deep beneath the surface, shielded with layers of steel and concrete. Once it had been a place for planning peace missions and trade discussions, but now it was filled with fear, grief, and arguments. Screens on the walls showed burning cities, millions dead, and cries for help echoing through every frequency. Captain Daniel Harris stood tall among the military leaders, his eyes dark from smoke and sleepless hours. He had seen cities fall. He had pulled survivors from rubble, and now he was here demanding action, but not everyone agreed with him. Some politicians shouted that Earth was not ready for war. They argued humanity should surrender before more missiles came. They said survival was better than pride. Daniel's jaw tightened. He could not believe they wanted to bow to monsters who had killed so many. Commander Olivia Price sat at the end of the table, silent at first, watching the chaos in the room. Her fingers moved quickly over a console, projecting data onto the screen. When she finally spoke, her voice cut through the shouting. She told them she had traced the signal from the enemy's transmission. The attackers were the Veari Dominion, an alien empire that ruled dozens of systems with cruelty. They had destroyed worlds before, enslaved millions, and now they had found Earth. The room went quiet as Olivia explained the Dominion's history. They were not looking for allies or trade. They saw other species as tools, as slaves, as meat for their machines. Their strike against Earth was not an accident. It was a message. Surrender, and chains would follow, or resistance and death. The council members looked around at each other, fear heavy in their eyes. Some whispered that humanity stood no chance against a galactic empire. Others clenched their fists, unwilling to imagine slavery for their children. Daniel finally slammed his hand on the table, his voice firm and commanding. He said Earth had no choice. Surrender meant the end of humanity's freedom. Retreat was impossible. The only path forward was retaliation. His words echoed across the chamber, reminding everyone that humanity had always risen when threatened. They had fought wars. They had crossed oceans. They had gone to the stars, and now they must fight again, not just for survival, but for honor. But still, the council was divided. The politicians feared the unknown. They spoke of hiding, of moving deeper into Earth's underground shelters, of negotiating with the Dominion. They thought humans could beg for mercy. Olivia stood then, her voice sharp. She told them begging would not save a single life. She showed intercepted data that the Dominion planned to send fleets within months. Earth had weeks at best to prepare. Waiting meant doom. Only action could save them. The room trembled again from distant aftershocks, a reminder of the missiles, destruction. Silence filled the air. The council chairman finally turned to Daniel and Olivia, asking if they truly believed humanity could fight. Olivia met Daniel's eyes, then spoke with certainty. She said yes. They could fight, not with what they had now, but with what they could build. She revealed secret projects already underway. Massive shipyards orbiting Mars and hidden bases on the Moon, where experimental weapons and ships had been tested. Projects that until now had been only dreams. But now those dreams had to become reality. Daniel nodded, adding that he had seen the strength of soldiers, engineers, and ordinary citizens. He reminded the council of the fire that burned in every survivor's eyes. The Dominion thought they had broken humanity, but instead they had awakened something fierce. If Earth stood together, building and fighting as one, they could rise against the Empire. The room began to shift, fear slowly turning into determination. Voices that once spoke of surrender now whispered of war. Finally, the council voted, the majority agreeing to launch the largest military project in human history. Earth would build a retaliation fleet, and at its heart would be a new warship, the Titan, a dreadnought larger and stronger than anything humanity had ever created. It would carry the fire of Earth's vengeance into the stars, Daniel was chosen as the commander, Olivia as his second-in-command, their bond of trust and courage making them the right leaders for the mission. As the meeting ended, Daniel walked through the ruined streets outside, seeing the people huddled in shelters, mothers cradling children, fathers searching for loved ones. He promised himself that he would not let them down. Olivia stood beside him, her mind already running through strategies, calculating ship numbers, fuel lines, weapon strengths. She knew the road ahead was filled with danger, but she also knew the Vayari Dominion had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity. The world remained scarred, smoke still rising into the sky. But in the council chambers deep below, a spark had been lit. Earth had chosen not to bow, not to hide, but to rise. The people of Earth would mourn their dead, but they would also sharpen their blades. Their engineers would work day and night. Their soldiers would train harder than ever, and their leaders would stand united under one banner. Daniel and Olivia knew this was only the beginning. The missiles had shattered their world, but now humanity would build something stronger from the ashes, and when the time came to strike back, the Dominion would learn the truth. Earth was not weak, Earth was not prey, Earth was fury, and the retribution of humankind was coming. Far above the red dust of Mars, in orbit where the planet's thin atmosphere faded into black space, shipyards glowed with lights brighter than stars. Massive scaffolds stretched like skeletons of giants, and inside them humans were building something the galaxy had never seen before. Workers in pressure suits drifted across beams, welding plates of shining metal together, sparks dancing like tiny comets. The sound of hammers and machinery carried through the hulls, echoing the heartbeat of humanity's determination. This secret project had been in progress for years, born from fear that someday Earth might not be alone in the galaxy. Engineers had worked in silence, preparing for an unknown enemy. Now that the enemy had come, their work became humanity's last hope. The shipyards had only one goal: to finish. The Dreadnought Titan, a warship larger than any cruiser, armed with experimental weapons and thick armor designed to survive anything the Dominion could throw. Captain Daniel Harris arrived at the shipyards aboard a shuttle, his eyes locked on the silhouette of Titan as it floated half-complete, even unfinished. It looked like a monster, its frame the size of a small city, thrusters lined along its rear, and a prow shaped like the blade of a sword. Daniel felt his chest tighten with pride and fear. This ship was not just steel and engines, it was Earth's answer to the Dominion's cruelty, and he had been chosen to command it. Commander Olivia Price was already there, her uniform neat despite the chaos of work all around her. She greeted Daniel with a sharp nod, then led him through the docking tunnel into Titan's heart. Inside the warship, corridors stretched like veins, rooms filled with half-installed consoles, cables spilling across the floor, and screens flickering with test codes. Everywhere men and women worked, with focused determination, their faces pale from exhaustion but burning with purpose. Olivia explained that Titan carried railguns capable of firing projectiles faster than light, plasma cannons that could melt through capital ships, and a new weapon hidden deep in its core, a fusion lance designed to pierce even the strongest shields. Daniel ran his hand along the cold steel walls, imagining the battles ahead. He knew ships were more than weapons. They were homes for the crews. Hundreds of men and women would live, fight and die inside these walls. It was his duty to lead them, to carry them into the storm and bring as many as possible back. Olivia seemed to sense his thoughts, reminding him that Titan was not a symbol of death. It was a symbol of survival, of resistance, of retribution. In the control room, Still half-built, Daniel stood before the captain's chair, wires dangling from the ceiling, screens flickering, and yet he could already see it. The crew at their stations, the hum of power, coursing through the ship, the stars ahead waiting for their journey. Olivia briefed him on the fleet that would accompany Titan. Destroyers, carriers, and support vessels were being prepared on Luna and Earth, but Titan would be the spearhead, the ship that carried Earth's vengeance. Back on Mars's surface, engineers and scientists worked without rest, sending designs and upgrades up to orbit every day. Whole factories had been redirected to supply the shipyards. Cities on Earth too wounded to fight sent their resources. Miners dug deeper into the asteroid belt, hauling back metals never before touched by human hands. Everyone sacrificed because everyone knew the truth. Humanity's survival now depended on Titan. Daniel spent his nights walking through the half-finished ship, speaking with workers, listening to their stories. A young mechanic told him her parents had been lost in Sydney when the missile struck. She worked 16 hours a day because she wanted to see the Dominion burn. A technician from Berlin said he had lost his brother, and every bolt he fastened onto Titan was for him. Daniel realized Titan was not just a warship. It was built from grief, rage, and love. Every plate of armor carried a story. Every cannon was a promise. As the weeks passed, the shipyard became alive with urgency. Alarms sounded as systems powered up for the first time. Engines roared with a low growl that shook the scaffolds. Weapons hummed as energy filled their cores. Shields blinked to life like a second skin over Titan's hull. Daniel watched each test with pride. Olivia analyzed every number, making sure nothing was left to chance. They both knew one flaw could cost millions of lives. Finally came the day of awakening, when Titan's systems were fully linked. Lights spread across its body, glowing lines racing down its hull like veins filled with fire. Deep inside, the fusion core pulsed, giving the dreadnought life. Daniel stood on the bridge, the captain's chair no longer empty. Olivia at his side, the crew at their posts for the first time, screens lit with data, the hum of energy filling the air. The Titan was no longer a dream, it was real, and it was ready. Across the galaxy, the Vayari Dominion celebrated their strike against Earth, convinced that humans were broken, but they had no idea of what was coming. The Titan stood in orbit above Mars, its cannons silent for now, its engines waiting to roar. But within its steel heart, humanity's fury had been forged. Daniel looked out the viewport, whispering to himself that when Titan left Mars, the galaxy would learn the cost of striking Earth, and Olivia, standing beside him, said quietly that this was only the beginning. The day Titan left Mars, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. Across Earth, Luna, and the colonies, billions tuned into their screens, waiting to see the birth of humanity's vengeance. The dreadnought hung in orbit, its massive frame glowing under the reflection of the sun, engines thrumming like the heartbeat of a giant. Destroyers, carriers, and support ships formed ranks around it, their silver hulls glimmering like blades ready for war. It was no longer just a fleet. It was a promise, a signal to the galaxy that humanity would not bow. On the bridge of Titan, Captain Daniel Harris stood at the center, his hands resting on the console before him. He wore no expression of fear, but his heart carried the weight of billions of lives. Every survivor of the missile strikes was counting on this fleet. Every orphan, every widow, every parent who had lost a child. Daniel looked at them all in his mind and whispered silently that he would not fail. Commander Olivia Price stood at his side, calm but sharp. Her eyes scanning the glowing maps of space on the holoscreens, she spoke with precision, giving orders to align the fleet, her voice steady like steel. The countdown to departure echoed through the shipyards. Engines across the fleet roared, the vibration shaking scaffolds loose. Workers cheered, tears streaming down their faces, because this was more than a launch. It was a rebirth. Daniel gave the order. Titan's engines flared, and the ship moved forward with unstoppable grace, its escorts following. Together they broke from Mars's orbit and cut into the endless black. Humanity's fury carried on steel wings. As they left the solar system, the crew of Titan settled into rhythm. Corridors buzzed with life, officers shouting orders, engineers checking systems, soldiers running drills. The dreadnought was alive, humming with energy. Daniel walked the decks often, speaking with crew members, reminding them why they fought. He found courage in their eyes, a courage born not of training alone, but of loss. These men and women had seen their homes burn, their families die, and yet they stood ready to strike back. Olivia, meanwhile, spent hours in the command room, charting the path toward Vayari territory, plotting every jump, every stop for supplies, her mind calculating outcomes faster than most machines. The silence of deep space pressed against the hull. But inside Titan, there was no silence, only the steady rhythm of humanity preparing for war. Daniel knew morale was as important as weapons, so he gathered his officers and addressed the crew through the intercom. His voice filled every corner of the ship. He reminded them of the 10 missiles, the cities lost, the people buried in rubble. Then he told them this was not a mission of revenge alone. It was a mission of justice. The galaxy needed to know that humans were not weak. They were not prey. They were hunters now, and their roar would echo forever. Cheers erupted through the decks, soldiers pounding their fists on tables, engineers shouting with pride. Even the youngest cadets stood taller. Trusted his people, and he trusted Titan. The journey stretched across weeks, the fleet making its way through uncharted sectors, stars and nebulae passing like paintings. They encountered abandoned colonies where alien ruins floated silent. Testaments to the Dominion's cruelty, Olivia collected data. Each ruined world a warning of what awaited Earth if they failed. Daniel used these sites to strengthen his crew, showing them that surrender was not survival. It was death delayed. The crew's resolve hardened with each passing star. There were moments of quiet, too, when soldiers shared stories in the mess hall, laughing despite the weight of war, when engineers carved names of lost loved ones into Titan's inner walls, when young cadets stared at the stars outside their windows and wondered if they would ever see Earth again. These small moments gave life to the ship, making it more than steel. It was a home, and that home carried humanity's soul. Finally, the fleet neared the Vega system, where Dominion scouts were rumored to patrol. Tension rose on the bridge. Olivia's eyes narrowed as she read incoming signals. Daniel tightened his grip on the console. They knew the enemy would not remain blind for long. Every step deeper into space brought them closer to confrontation, closer to testing if Titan's power was real or just hope. But for now, in that long stretch of dark between stars, the fleet pressed forward, Titan leading, its cannon silent but hungry, its shields shimmering faintly, carrying the weight of a wounded world. Daniel stood on the bridge, staring at the endless horizon of stars. He felt the ghosts of New York, Tokyo, Berlin, and all the others at his back urging him forward. Olivia looked at him and said softly that the Dominion thought humanity was broken, but they were about to find out how wrong they were. Daniel nodded, his voice quiet but firm, promising that before this war ended, the galaxy would learn to fear the name of Earth. The human fleet cut through the darkness of space, Titan at the front like a great hunter, its massive hull glowing faintly as stars reflected off its armor. Everyone on board knew the journey was dangerous, but no one spoke of turning back. Captain Daniel Harris stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the void ahead. Commander Olivia Price monitored signals on her console, her instincts sharp. She warned Daniel that they were entering the Vega system, a place where Dominion scouts were known to prowl. Silence filled the bridge, every officer waiting for what might come. At first, space seemed calm, only the hum of the engines echoing through the ship. But then Olivia's console lit up, red symbols flashing across the screen. Multiple ships were moving in from the edge of the system, Dominion raiders, sleek and sharp, their hulls covered in glowing red markings like scars of fire. Daniel gave the order at once, shields up, weapons hot. Every soldier on Titan snapped to attention. Corridors filled with the sound of boots, gunners rushing to their stations, engineers powering up the railguns and plasma cannons. The air thick with tension. The Dominion ships moved fast, cutting through the void with deadly precision. They opened fire first, streaks of plasma racing toward the human fleet. Explosions lit up space as the first human escort ship shuddered under impact. Alarms screamed across Titan, but its shields held strong, glowing blue as the energy rippled across the surface. Daniel clenched his fists and barked for a counterattack. Titan roared to life, its massive railguns unleashing projectiles that tore through the dark like thunder. One Dominion raider exploded in a flash of fire, fragments scattering into the abyss. The ambush had begun. Dozens of raiders circling the fleet, trying to break them apart. Olivia's voice was calm but firm as she directed the escorts, her commands precise. She moved destroyers into defensive walls, carriers pulling back to protect supply ships. She turned the chaos into order, while Daniel focused on Titan, maneuvering the dreadnought like a beast, swinging its cannons toward enemy clusters, every shot striking with terrifying force. Inside the ship, crew members worked under fire, engineers repairing shield nodes as sparks rained from consoles, medics rushing to treat the wounded after each impact, soldiers bracing themselves as the hull shook. Yet no one faltered. They knew this was the first true test, the moment the galaxy would see if humans could fight. Titan became the spear that led them all. Every cannon blast a roar of defiance, every shield pulse a promise that they would not break. The battle raged across the system, plasma trails carving bright scars into the night, Dominion ships darting in like wolves. But the human fleet refused to scatter. They fought together, tighter and fiercer with every passing moment. Daniel's voice carried through the intercom, urging his crew to stand strong, reminding them of Earth, of the families who watched from the ruins. His words lit fire in their hearts, their fear turning into fury. Olivia spotted a weakness, her eyes narrowing as she studied enemy patterns. The raiders moved in packs, relying on speed and confusion, but their commander's flagship stayed at the edge, directing them. She relayed this to Daniel, and he immediately ordered a shift. Titan's thrusters roared, pushing the massive dreadnought forward, cutting through enemy lines like a blade. Dominion ships tried to block them, but Titan's cannons burned holes through their hulls, clearing the way. The human fleet followed, pressing toward the flagship. When Titan's guns locked onto the Dominion command ship, silence fell for a moment. Then Daniel gave the order. The railguns fired. Slamming into the enemy's shields, plasma cannons followed. The Dominion commander tried to retreat, but Titan was relentless. Another barrage hit. Shields cracked, and the alien vessel spun out of control. Daniel ordered grappling beams to hold it, and within minutes the flagship was crippled, its weapons dark, its engines dead. A boarding team was sent, soldiers storming the broken vessel, fighting through narrow corridors filled with alien resistance. It was brutal, but the humans pushed forward, driven by rage, until finally they dragged the Dominion commander back to Titan. A tall creature with armored skin and cruel glowing eyes, it hissed at the humans, laughing even in defeat. Daniel and Olivia stood before it in the interrogation chamber. Daniel asked why the Dominion attacked Earth. The creature sneered and said humans were weak, soft prey. Their destruction was meant to be a warning to others. But Olivia leaned forward, her voice cold and sharp. She told the commander he had miscalculated, that humanity was not prey, that Earth would not bow, and that this battle was proof. For the first time, she saw doubt flicker in the alien's eyes. Daniel ordered the interrogation recorded, every word sent back to Earth, so the people could hear the truth, that the Dominion had underestimated them, and that they had already begun to fear. When the battle ended, debris of alien ships floated across Vega, fires still burning in the wreckage. The human fleet regrouped, their losses painful but not crushing. Titan stood at the center, its shield scarred but unbroken, its guns cooling after unleashing fury. The crew cheered, relief flooding through them. They had survived their first true fight. And more than that, they had won. As silence returned to the system, Daniel walked to the viewport, staring at the wreckage, his chest heavy with pride and grief. They had proven themselves. But he knew this was only the beginning. Olivia stood beside him, saying softly that whispers of this victory would spread. The galaxy would hear that Earth had fought back, and that would change everything. Daniel nodded, his voice low, promising that this was only the first step. Soon the Dominion would learn the full power of humanity's retribution. The human fleet pushed deeper into enemy space, their victory at Vega still fresh in their minds. But there was no time for celebration. Olivia Price studied her maps and scans. Her eyes sharp, she had discovered their next target, the alien world of Keleth, a fortress planet where the Dominion built its war machines. It was not just a shipyard, it was the heart of their production. If it fell, the Dominion would suffer a wound they had not felt in centuries. Captain Daniel Harris listened quietly as she explained. Then he stood before his officers and said in a voice filled with steel that humanity would strike Keleth and show the galaxy that Earth's fury could not be stopped. The journey to Keleth was long, filled with silence and preparation. Soldiers sharpened their weapons. Engineers checked every cannon and pilots studied flight patterns again and again. The crew of Titan moved like one body, their fear hidden behind determination. They knew this battle would not be easy. Keleth was heavily defended, and the Dominion would not underestimate them a second time. Daniel walked the decks, speaking to his people, reminding them that they fought not just for themselves but for every city lost, every life stolen, every child who cried under the fire of alien missiles. His words lit fire in their hearts. Finally, the fleet dropped out of warp, and the planet Keleth filled their view. It was a dark world covered in smoke. Massive factories glowing on the surface, and orbiting above it were rings of alien cruisers and defense stations, their weapons already pointing outward. Olivia whispered that this would not be a battle. It would be a storm. Daniel nodded and gave the order. Titan surged forward, its escorts spreading out in formation, and the battle began. The Dominion fleet opened fire, beams of energy tearing through the void, the sky filled with burning lines of light. Titan's shields flared as the first strikes landed. The dreadnought shook but did not falter. Daniel barked orders, railguns fired, plasma cannons roared, each shot lighting the blackness. A Dominion cruiser shattered under Titan's fury, spinning into fragments. Olivia coordinated the escorts. Destroyers cutting through the smaller ships while carriers launched squadrons of fighters that swarmed the enemy like a wave of steel. But the Dominion fought fiercely, their cruisers pressing in, their stations pouring fire into the human fleet. One human destroyer exploded, its crew lost in the blaze. Grief tore through Titan's decks, but Daniel's voice filled the intercom, firm and unshaken. He told them that every life lost would be honored by victory, and the crew roared back. In agreement, Titan pushed harder, its cannons tearing open another cruiser, its railguns punching holes through enemy lines. As the battle raged, Olivia saw the chance they needed. She ordered bombardments onto the shipyards below. Titan's massive weapons turned toward the surface, fire raining down from the heavens. The alien factories cracked and burned, towers collapsing for the first time. The Dominion's heart bled. Olivia coordinated with carriers, their bombers diving through enemy fire to strike deeper into the factories. Explosions shook the surface of Keleth, fires spreading across entire cities built for war. The enemy threw everything they had, massive cruisers closing in on Titan, their weapons blazing, shields shattering. The dreadnought trembled under the assault, but Daniel refused to yield. His eyes locked on the enemy. He ordered the fusion lance charged, deep inside Titan. The superweapon roared to life, its energy building. The bridge glowed with a blue light as power surged through the ship, and then with a voice like thunder, Daniel gave the order. The fusion lance fired, a beam of pure destruction cutting through the largest Dominion ship. Its shields broke, its hull split apart, and the cruiser exploded in a fireball so bright it lit the planet below. The sight sent shockwaves through both fleets. Humans cheered, the Dominion faltered, their ships hesitating. And in that hesitation, Olivia struck. She ordered a full offensive, destroyers pushing forward, fighters swarming through the gaps, Titan tearing apart anything in its path. The battle turned. One by one, the Dominion. Ships fell until their formation broke, the survivors fleeing into the void, leaving Kelith burning beneath them. The human fleet regrouped, scarred but alive. Titan's hull smoked. Its shields flickered, but it still stood, proud and unbroken. The crew erupted in cheers, shouting Earth's name, the sound echoing through every deck. Daniel stood at the viewport, watching the fires consume Kelith, his heart heavy but proud. Olivia joined him, saying softly that the Dominion had lost something greater than ships today. They had lost their fearlessness. They had been struck where they thought themselves untouchable, and the galaxy would hear of it. And she was right, even as Kelith burned. Whispers spread. Alien slaves spoke of humans who had defeated their masters. Alien traders carried stories of a dreadnought called Titan, and in distant systems oppressed species began to hope. Daniel knew the war was far from over, but tonight, humanity had shown the galaxy what retribution looked like. 10 missiles had burned Earth, but on Kelith, Earth had answered, and the Dominion would never forget the day humanity's fury set their world on fire. The flames of Kelith still burned in the memories of the crew, when Titan and the human fleet prepared for their next step. The Dominion had suffered a wound, but not a death. Reports from captured communications revealed that the Dominion's capital system was rallying fleets, gathering every warship they had to crush the humans once and for all. Daniel Harris stood on the bridge of Titan, his eyes fixed on the glowing star map, and he told his crew that there could be no turning back. This was the moment to strike. At the heart of the enemy, this was the moment when the galaxy would learn humanity's true strength. The fleet set course for the capital world of the Dominion, a planet called Vaer Prime, a jewel of darkness wrapped in rings of defense stations, shipyards and fleets larger than anything the humans had yet faced. The journey was filled with silence, the crew aware that many of them might not return. Yet there was no hesitation. Soldiers polished their weapons, engineers whispered to the ship as if it were alive, promising it they would not let it fall. Pilots sharpened their focus, preparing for the most brutal fight of their lives. Olivia Price worked day and night in the command room, her voice steady, her plans precise, mapping every possibility, every weakness, every risk. When the fleet finally emerged from warp, Vaer Prime filled their screens, a massive world glowing with alien cities and guarded by an armada so vast it blotted out the stars. The Dominion had been waiting, their ships moving into formation like predators circling prey. The crew of Titan stared at the sight, fear twisting in their stomachs, but Daniel's voice cut through the silence, reminding them of Earth, reminding them of New York, Tokyo, London, and all the others. He told them that today was not just revenge, it was justice. Justice for every city burned, justice for every child buried in rubble. His words echoed across the fleet, and the crew roared their answer. The battle began with fire. The Dominion unleashed their weapons, beams of red energy cutting across the void, explosions lighting the dark like dying stars. The human fleet met them head-on. Titan at the front, its railguns thundering, its plasma cannons screaming, each shot tearing holes through enemy formations. But the Dominion pressed harder, their numbers overwhelming. Destroyers fell, human fighters exploded in clouds of fire. Daniel clenched his jaw but refused to waver. Olivia's voice guided the fleet, her calm orders keeping them together, her sharp mind turning chaos into survival. Then came the moment Titan's crew had been preparing for, the charging of the fusion lance, deep in the heart of the ship. The weapon awoke, energy coursing through conduits, the ship glowing with blue, fire. The crew felt the vibration under their feet, and when Daniel gave the order, the lance unleashed a beam brighter than any sun cutting across the battlefield. It struck the Dominion's flagship, a massive beast of a vessel, shields shattered, hull splitting apart. The explosion shook the system, a wave of fire consuming dozens of nearby ships. The crew of Titan erupted in cheers, their fear replaced with fury and triumph. The Dominion reeled, their formation breaking, but they were not yet beaten. More ships poured in, stations firing from orbit. The humans fought with everything they had, destroyers ramming enemy cruisers, fighters diving into suicidal charges, Titan bleeding from its shields but still standing. Daniel barked orders through the chaos, his voice carrying strength into every heart. Olivia coordinated bombardments onto orbital defenses. One by one, the stations exploded, fire raining down toward Vaer Prime. At the height of the battle, when exhaustion threatened to break them, Daniel addressed the entire fleet, his face appearing on every screen. He told them that this was the moment humanity's story would be written. He told them that if they fell today, they would fall with honor. But if they stood, if they fought, they would make the galaxy remember the name of Earth for all time. His words spread like fire. The crews rallied, their ships fighting. With renewed fury, Titan surged forward again, carving a path straight to the capital world. The skies above Vaer Prime burned, Dominion ships falling, stations crumbling. The humans fought like predators unleashed, and for the first time in centuries, the Dominion knew fear. Their soldiers screamed over comms, their commanders panicked, their fleets broke. Daniel stood on the bridge, watching as Titan's weapons tore apart the last lines of defense. Olivia turned to him, her face fierce, and told him the truth. Humanity had done what no other race had dared. They had brought the Dominion to its knees. Finally, with a last thunderous strike, Titan's fusion lance fired again, piercing the Dominion's capital fortress in orbit. The explosion shook Vaer Prime itself, and silence fell over the battlefield. Ships drifted, fires burned. The Dominion's reign of terror was shattered that day. Their capital burning, their fleets broken, their pride destroyed across the galaxy. Species that had lived under their chains whispered in awe of Earth, whispers that would grow into legends. 10 missiles had struck Earth. But in return, humanity's retaliation had shaken the very galaxy. Daniel and Olivia stood together on Titan's bridge, staring at the ruins of their enemy, both knowing this was not the end, but the beginning of a new dawn, a dawn where no one would ever again mistake humans for prey. The fires of the Dominion's capital still glowed in the darkness of space when the human fleet turned for home. Titan led the formation, its hull scarred and blackened, its shields drained. But it was still alive, still powerful, and still, carrying the pride of Earth. The crew moved slowly through the corridors, exhausted but smiling, for they knew they had done what no one in the galaxy thought possible. They had faced the Dominion at its strongest point, and they had won. On the bridge, Captain Daniel Harris stood tall, though his uniform was torn, his eyes heavy with sleeplessness. He looked at the galaxy map glowing before him. The Dominion's systems no longer marked in blood red, many of their fleets scattered and broken. Commander Olivia Price stood beside him, her face calm but her voice soft as she said humanity had done more than just win a battle. They had changed the balance of the galaxy. Alien empires who once feared the Dominion were now whispering of Earth, of Titan, of a people who had turned grief into fury and fury into victory. The fleet returned to Earth slowly, carrying wounded soldiers, broken ships, and the weight of countless memories. When they finally entered orbit, the world below erupted in cheers. People poured into the streets. Screens across cities showed the dreadnought Titan rising above the atmosphere like a guardian. Children waved flags, survivors of the missile strikes wept, and families embraced, for they knew they had not only survived, they had won. Earth was scarred, its cities still rebuilding, but the spirit of its people stood unbroken. Daniel addressed the world from Titan's bridge, his face broadcasted to every screen. He spoke simply. He reminded them of the night when 10 missiles had fallen and the sky burned. He reminded them of the fear that had gripped humanity. And then he told them that fear had turned into fire. He told them that the Dominion had been broken, their fleets shattered, and that humanity was no longer a world to be pitied or underestimated. They were a people who had written their name into the stars. The cheers of billions echoed back to him, filling the bridge with a roar stronger than any cannon. Olivia too spoke, her words sharp but filled with hope. She said Earth had won not because of one ship or one weapon, but because of unity, because ordinary people had worked day and night in shipyards, because soldiers had stood shoulder to shoulder, because engineers had given their blood and sweat, because humanity had fought as one family. She promised that Titan was not the end. It was the beginning. New fleets would rise, Earth would grow stronger, and no empire would ever again think of humans as prey. The galaxy listened. Though Earth did not yet know how much in distant systems, Alien slaves whispered of freedom, rebels lit fires in the dark, and even the Dominion's surviving commanders trembled, their centuries of dominance shattered by a race they once called weak. The story spread quickly, told in marketplaces, in shadowed taverns, in the ruins of conquered worlds. They spoke of a world attacked by 10 missiles, and of how its people answered with a vengeance so fierce it shook the galaxy. On Titan itself, life slowly returned to normal. Soldiers walked the halls with pride. Engineers repaired the scars on the hull. Pilots cleaned the soot from their cockpits. They carried grief for the friends they had lost, but also pride for what they had achieved. Daniel often walked among them quietly, listening, speaking when needed, reminding them their sacrifices would never be forgotten. Olivia worked to organize the next phase, plans for alliances with species who had once feared the Dominion, her eyes always on the stars, knowing this was only the start of a larger story. One evening, as Earth's sun rose over the curve of the planet, Daniel stood at the viewport of Titan, his reflection pale against the glowing light. He thought of New York, Tokyo, Berlin, and the other cities burned on that terrible night. He thought of the children he had seen hiding under rubble, of the parents who had cried out for their families, and he whispered that justice had been delivered. But he also knew the fight for survival never truly ended. Humanity was awake now, and the galaxy would never again see them as defenseless. Olivia joined him at the viewport, her voice calm as she told him the truth. Humanity had been wounded but not destroyed. Their scars would remind them of who they were. Their victory would remind the galaxy of what they could become. Together they watched as the lights of Earth glimmered in the night, cities still rebuilding, but alive, stronger than before, and they knew this was a new dawn. The war was not just about vengeance, it was about identity. Humanity had proven they were not weak, not fragile, not prey. They had shown they were predators when pushed,